Hello and welcome to Art Show. I'm Craig Stover, and today I have with me Thomas Brummett. Hi, Thomas. How are you today?
Hey Craig, thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you on the show. I am a fan of your work,
Wow.
and so I wanted to start right away. I had fun going on your various social medias and picking pieces. There's a lot to choose from, but
Hmm.
obviously, I wanted to start with this picture. This is a powerhouse picture.
Oh
Can
yeah.
you tell me a little bit about this?
Well, this was kind of actually the picture that kind of shocked me into doing this series. So this is my pandemic series, the River series and the Halo series. I couldn't even go into my studio, so I luckily I had a beautiful Wissahickon Park nearby. And so, just to keep myself sane, because remember in those early days, we just
Yeah.
didn't know what was going to happen. But so I go down there every day and just bring my camera because I really couldn't do much else. And I've been walking along this river for years. And I stopped at one place and I saw this little moment. It just caught my eye. And I just thought, huh, this is interesting. And it turns out that this particular place in the river is very, very unique
Hmm.
in terms of the turbulence.
Hmm.
And and the more I looked into turbulence kind of later on, it's still a complete mystery to science. There's no mathematical equation to describe and predict turbulence. It's a complete chaotic system, but even chaos theory apparently doesn't quite fit it. Then
Well,
on top of that, oh, go ahead.
I can tell you as I've done a lot of sailing in my life, boating and stuff, and it's
Mhm.
usually the shape of the bottom of the river that boaters have always found that then you can read the river like when it makes
Yes,
those sort of shapes. So this must be a really, is this a shallow part of the river?
it's pretty shallow, yeah.
And then
Um,
so you're photographing this. Are you manipulating the photographs
No,
at
I'm
all?
not manipulating anything. All this is I've taken two images and put them together to show their similarity. This is like 4 or 5 seconds apart, but also, how kind of things are moving. Um,
I
so it's a
like
little,
how you had mentioned about a drawing. The way it does look like a drawing. It
it
does look
looks
like.
like, yeah, it kind of reminds me of Dubuffet's, some of Dubuffet's work.
Hmm. His early ink work stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And then how you print these out, these are rather large from what I remember.
Well, all my work, I mean, lately, the last few years, and you really can't tell with this image because as you walk up to it, it changes quite a bit. So as you approach it, it has this more kind of drawing quality, and then you get into kind of what you're looking at. So I'm shooting in a very high shutter speed,
Mhm.
which allows me to kind of freeze this whole thing. But the jaw-dropping idea about these when you get close and you really start looking is that every black line,
Mhm.
and I'm talking every black line, no matter how big or small, is a reflection of a tree. And
Mhm.
I'm talking about the forest across the river.
Right.
Okay. So, and so all those little ovals and squigglies are kind of the water creates this funny lens effect as well. So I'm using a lens to photograph what the river is doing, and it's taking within these reflections, which are big and small, it's enlarging and duplicating every little moment in a tree branch.
Mhm.
It's you get pretty lost in these when you start looking at them.
It's like a second forest.
Yeah, but
Uh,
there's kind of a tree at every center of every squiggle, kind of
yeah,
thing. It's really
that's fantastic.
interesting.
I love how you started the conversation talking about COVID, because every artist that I've talked to, I have yet to meet one where COVID hasn't totally reshuffled the deck for them. And I love this. No, oh, knowing that your other work. So I wanted to talk. Oops, I wanted to talk about your other work.
Okay.
So sorry about that. I wanted to start with this piece.
Uh-huh.
Um, this is a stunner of a piece. I really like this, and I wish I should have brought the photo where it shows the scale of this and what this is like in the edition that you did. Um, you told me, or I read on your website that this image was the start of this series.
This was taken during when I was photographing the desert series, and this little guy came across and took a few photos, but just because he was so beautiful, and I really wasn't thinking about animals. And then um, I kind of thought about this, and this picture kept coming back to me. And I had a very interesting teacher when I was struggling with trying to figure out what to do in graduate school because I had so many ideas. And he was like, listen, most of your ideas are noise. It's the ones that haunt you and will not leave you alone. These are the ones you have to pay attention to. And this has been my guiding light
Yeah,
all my artistic career is I just wait until something says do it. You know?
that's great advice. That's
It's the
fantastic.
best advice I've ever gotten. It's and Kiefer talks about waiting.
Hmm.
Like, have you ever seen some of his documentaries? He's got rooms just, he had this, of course, giant place, but he would just fill like rooms with straw and rooms with this and rooms with that. And it was like these little sections of his brain that he would then, revisit.
Hmm.
And, but he talks about waiting a lot, like just wait and think.
It's a great piece. So I want to get a little bit technical on this. How are you printing this?
Okay, so with this series, and we kind of have to go back a little bit, but I really, when I decided I want to do animals, first I had to figure out how to photograph them and where I was going to find them. I'm not a, wildlife photographer, so I needed to find people that had animals that I could then kind of interact with. And I really thought, okay, this is a portraiture situation, but where those dynamics between the portrait artist and the subject are kind of working together. In other words, I'm right there. All these pictures I did of the animals, I'm right in front of them.
Mm.
I got equipment broken by frisky cougars, and so my goal with this, because at this point I had been experimenting in the darkroom quite a bit, and I was really manipulating the film grain. And I was, I mean, if anybody's ever been in a dark room, they know that, um, you project the image onto a piece of paper, a negative image, and then it comes up as a positive, and it comes up from light to dark. So what I would do is I would make that image, and then I would overexpose it, and then I would use bleaches and brushes to bring the image back. And by doing so, it started manipulating the film grain.
Hmm.
And when I was looking at these pictures with loops and, really closely, I just fell in love with the textures, and they really felt like graphite drawings in a little, in a way on kind of a toothy paper. And
So if that's your process, are you still able to then turn around and make an addition doing
so
it that?
that's yeah. So the trick is with these is I blow them way up. That's another thing. So you can see the grain.
Hmm.
If it was just an 8 by 10, which is kind of the size I was working with, I would then scan them and bring them way up. So this was back when before I was kind of one of the first people to kind of use it as a process. The scanner for me, the scanner was just rephotographing
Hmm.
image, so it was like I photographed it twice, kind of.
Hmm.
And by doing so, oh man, you could just really pull out all this beautiful edges and
Hmm.
textures and stuff. And I just went crazy. So I experimented with printing smaller so I could bring it up more. And, I goofed around a lot, but basically these are all unique one of a kind images
Mm.
that I then scan and then I make
And then you'd
additions.
be able to make the addition from that.
I keep all my originals. I've only put a few originals on the market, and I've given a few to friends. But all the master prints I keep, and they're all basically 8 by 10s.
So is I wanted to flip to this one. Is this done with a similar process where you're manipulating it and then
This
so
one,
you have master? Yeah.
yeah. So this this is really shows the lens that I was using, and so I was basically this lens kind of taught me how we see because if you really pay attention to how you see, you can only focus on a very small section
Okay.
of your field. And if you just watch yourself focusing, you realize, oh my God, I'm really not seeing anything except this little
Right.
here, right? So this lens allowed me to shift the focus where I could shift the viewer's eye and it would throw, backgrounds way out of focus. So within this image, say the upper left-hand corner, those branches are going out of focus as you go down the left side of the paper, right?
Hmm.
Now, all the little orbs and things, that's just me with bleaches working into the print. So
Hmm.
I can do all kinds of things in that respect.
Hmm.
Then on the right side, kind of same thing, way out of focus, going up.
Hmm.
So I'm guiding your eye through this. So the cactus is, this is in the collection of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, by the way. And so the cactus again is going from in and out. And and plus it's just this really dramatic kind of thing.
So that process that you were describing, that wonderful painterly process, really for me.
Yeah, I'm a
Uh,
frustrated painter, exactly.
yeah. So that's something that because I've been showing works that were a little bit older, but say that first image of the water, you're not using that process anymore.
Not at all, no, not at
Okay.
all. That took a different lens, and I tried using that lens, but it just didn't work.
Okay.
Um,
I'm
certain
I'm trying to get
lenses,
a feel.
yeah, you need, certain tools for certain types of photography, and
So I wanted to show this. I thought this was just a lovely piece. I'm loving the colors. And for me, what I'm focusing in on is the relationship of that light green and the light blue that's permeated through
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Um, so this is, am I right in saying this is sort of an intermediary step between the older work and newer work?
Well, this was this is just me on the river during, I photographed for 2 years, so, 4 seasons twice.
Okay.
Um, and if you've been on water, you probably remember that every day is different. I mean,
Yeah.
quality of light, how many, what's the
The
cloud thickness?
what's the Buddhist philosophy? And it's never the same river twice. So yeah.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
so it was always opening up things to me. And this, I mean, how I'm reading this, there's so much more color in this than even we're seeing now.
Yeah, I
There's
think I this is a
violets
picture I
and
need to be in
magentas.
front of.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I'm just responding to kind of what I'm seeing, but I got really interested in these, these waveforms which are constant through the universe.
I
And
really like it. And I think I've got one final piece. And again, this is kind of we're going out of order here. Um,
mhm.
but I wanted to show this piece because for me, I'm enamored by the geometry in this picture. The
Yeah.
simple thirds and how it the curve backs, how it all goes fits together. But then the longer I looked at it, I started to see that wonderful like bluish gray in the
Mhm.
background that I guess you sort of pulled forward. Is there any kind of crazy story behind this particular picture? It was just a lovely.
Basically, this was from the first series, Nature, that Nature Morte, and I photographed. Well, this is after I got out of grad school, and I was kind of fed up with that experience. It was kind of traumatizing. And then I just started photographing stuff in my studio and just to relax and look. And I would just sit and look at things for a long time. And that taught me a different way to make images. Is
Is
the
your
more I
studio filled with source materials?
yeah, when I was doing this stuff, there was tons of this stuff around. People started bringing me things 'cause I've been doing it for so long. So I had all kinds of cool stuff and
And
had a nice show. It really was nice to be around all this stuff when it's on the wall.
yeah, I
But
definitely need to see this.
this is a magnolia. I'm obsessed with magnolias. They're in a lot of my work, and
Hmm.
they're not. And again, this is that crazy lens, and the the color scheme. If I leave, the again, I'm printing down to black, and then I'm bringing it up with brushes, so I could preserve this gray. As I got to the gray point, I could stop, and then I could work into the highlights. And
It's very well done.
yeah,
I'd
so I'm kind of
I'd love to see this.
dodging and burning with bleaches and brushes is the easiest way to describe it for a photographer.
So I got a bunch of questions I'm dying to ask you. First off, I want to talk about. I like to ask this question for photographers. Did you have a camera as a kid?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
What was your first camera?
My dad had lots of different. He was just into everything, all these cool gadgets and stuff. But he had a 3D camera, okay, and that was my first kind of introduction into an incredible, optical device that rendered our family in 3 dimensions.
So did was it mostly his cameras that you started out with, or did you were you
Yeah,
like gifted a camera?
yeah. And then I what was my first camera? It was just an old camera I got in like a pawn shop or something.
Mhm.
And then he had an SX70 and I play with that a lot. That was like the coolest thing I've ever seen.
But what's your favorite camera now? What do you love to shoot on?
Well, I guess I mean I've always loved my Hasselblad. I like the square format. Although
Hmm.
that last piece was obviously done on a square format. Um, and I could adapt this crazy lens to both my Nikon and my Hasselblad. So, but I have a 4x5. I have a full, I was a commercial photographer for a long time, so
Okay.
I have a full stable of cameras. But yeah, that old handmade Hasselblad, yeah, that's a nice camera. Yeah.
And you're still printing in darkroom, in your own dark.
Right now I lost my darkroom, so now I'm printing with a printer, and then I'm toning at my house.
Oh, nice.
I'm
Okay.
actually doing it in the backyard now.
When uh when you first started, was there anybody who was sort of instrumental that sort of lit your fire in terms of photography, or was it more of an incremental over the years?
Uh, yeah, my influence, they're wide and crazy, but I'm really into Terrell. I was really into Irwin. Um, um, and to be honest, it was Maplethorpe that got me thinking about that plants could say something else besides just being a plant. I mean, his photographs of flowers, you know, I just thought to myself, what else can they say? You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of just that's when I started photographing all the nature mortis series.
So you had mentioned earlier about you're a photographer as a sort of frustrated painter. I'm not sure exactly what the words you use.
Yeah.
Have you ever worked in other mediums aside from photography that you enjoyed or maybe will like to explore later on?
Yeah, I keep telling myself. I mean, first of all, my background is in ceramics, and I did a lot of
Okay.
paint, clay, and all my darkroom chemistry ideas came from my knowledge of ceramics. and all
That's
the
nice.
chemistry involved, and the glazes and the firing and what happens, oxidation and all that stuff. So,
When was the last time you did any ceramics?
oh geez, not since college, but
Would you ever, if
it
given
really
the
informed
opportunity?
me. Yeah, I was doing a lot of raku. It really informed me. I was doing a lot of painting on the clay,
Mhm.
abstraction. So there you go.
Do you think that that was what led you to start messing with your images as you're printing, adding bleaches and working the
Yeah,
surface?
I was really bored with just plain black and white prints. So, I do a lot of creative play in the darkroom, and I just was goofing around.
Huh.
I mean, a lot of this stuff just comes out of mistakes, as a lot of people would finally admit when they're, you know, playing around with different processes.
Well, you actually answered my next question, which was if your work was planned out or if experimentation was part of it. So we'll get rid of that question. So looking at your work over the years, there's quite a difference. How do you feel that your work has changed from when you first started to now?
Well, if I kind of walk through all the series, one was kind of a direct. I was always mining, the areas between mark making and photography in the beginning, and playing with, uh, really trying to show that a photograph can be way more than just a photograph.
Mhm.
And that took me through 3 or 4 series, and then I came to this point where I was going to try to document the infinite, which, if you kind of go back, the only people, I mean, the philosophers wouldn't go near it, just a
Mhm.
little bit. Eastern thought definitely explored it, but the poets, they wrap their careers around it. And I just thought, because it became, after a few series, this became kind of a spiritual meditation journey for me.
Mhm.
And so then when I hit the infinities, and I put on my printmaking hat, and I kind of made these things like a printmaker, where I was combining images,
Mhm.
and a lot of, I've always done a lot of multiple exposures, in a lot of my work. And this is kind of when, so I kind of moved into a new territory. But after that, I thought I was done. It was kind of my magnum opus as far as I was concerned. It was a kind of summarizing everything I knew about the natural world. But sure enough, it opened me up to noticing other things. And if it wasn't for COVID, I don't think I would have discovered this little moment in the
Mhm.
river. And then I'm still working on what I call infinite systems now, because that's, for me,
That's a
really,
nice title. Yeah.
yeah. It's just
So,
it's just what I call you know, these different things, and that I'm looking at.
so you mentioned, sort of how you're using photography to discover certain things. This is a question that often trips up artists. Do you consider your work to be autobiographical at all?
Hmm.
Or are you the kind of artist who you're trying to make something that is maybe separate from yourself?
No, my childhood was, I grew up in Colorado, kind of on a desert in front of the mountains in southern Colorado, and we, my parents would go up to the mountains, and they finally bought a little cabin up there. So I spent my whole youth wandering around the mountains, and with my buddies, we hiked a lot of mountains, climbed a lot of mountains, and a lot of deserts. We spent, the high school kids were all doing goofy things. We were out in the natural world, just trekking around, just looking
Mm-hmm.
at stuff. So that totally informed everything I do. It
Mm-hmm.
really does. I mean, I didn't think about it consciously until I get older, and I look back, I'm like, God, yeah, I got all that, you know,
Yeah. So
during.
I'm a little curious about what inspires you. You're going to make something new. You're not sure what you're going to make new. Do you have sort of go-to stuff that sort of um, really pushes you forward? I'll give you an example. I've got some artists that will say, "Oh, I need to have a cup of tea and listen to the radio," and somebody else will say, "Oh, I need to read first, and that's what gets me going. My ideas come out of that." Where do your ideas spring from?
Oh, well, definitely looking at things.
Hmm.
I, I like to read and I like to look. I spend a lot of time in art museums. Um,
So when you
but
say look at things, are you talking about other people's artworks or like nature? Or
nature, everything. Yeah. I
okay,
mean, and I think most of my work, in other words, most of the ideas of my work have come from a previous body of work where I'll jot down something like, or I'll just save a photo and, it's going to remind me of maybe going down that tributary. We all go down little
so
tributaries.
would you say that your art is all linked, like one leads to the next?
Yeah, I think that the work is just a different facet of the same thing, basically. I'm just looking at the world.
All right, so you're the artist filter. It comes in and comes out those magic fingers.
Yeah, I guess. Like just so you know, I mean, I was kind of jotting down notes and stuff for this interview, and I came across something I wrote about illumination, and I thought, oh, that's an interesting idea again to think about.
Yeah, use that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So today you actually gave me an idea for another series. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Do you keep like a little sketchbook of ideas? Like, do you write
Uh,
down?
I just little notes and stuff. I I tend to I think it's really bad to go into something knowing what you're going to do or
No,
knowing
I get it.
that the
Yeah,
answer.
yeah.
It's going to be really stale work, I think.
Yeah, I
I
totally.
need to
I'm
be
beginner's
totally
luck is a huge
blown
thing.
away. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's got to be you got to be on a journey.
Yeah,
So I just that's the kind of note I'll leave myself, like maybe go try this idea.
awesome. So, time for just one more question. Question I ask all artists: what does making art do for you?
Well, it's for me, it's really interesting. By using a camera for so long, I get into a meditative state immediately when I bring it up to my head. And I'm sure painters will say the same thing, like they put the brush in their hand and suddenly they. So this is really big for me. It really shifts my being into seeing and experiencing versus thinking and being in the world kind of thing.
It's almost like a switch.
It
Sorry.
literally is a switch. Yeah. And I tell people, it's like, I tried when I was there, I really tried to meditate. I really did all that stuff. And it was so hard.
Yeah,
And I know if I'm sure I had a good teacher, it would work out. But I'm like, I just use this camera and I'm in a meditative state. You
you're
can use
there, right?
music, you can dance, you can paint, whatever. It's a beautiful state of mind to be in.
Fantastic. Well, Thomas, unfortunately, our time's up. I had a wonderful time talking to you. I can't thank you enough for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate it. And I also want to thank everybody who tuned in to watch ArtShow today. We love your support, especially if you can like and subscribe. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments section. If we can't answer them, we'll pass them along. But thank you again for watching. And again, thanks for coming by today, Thomas. I really
Thank you
appreciate
so much. Yeah, it was a pleasure. It's fun talking to another artist.
it. Take care, everyone.